Being comfortable and capable and competent at path of building is arguably one of the best skills, if not the most important skill that you can acquire and work on to becoming an intermediate and then more advanced player of Path of Exile, particularly if you are going to be looking into making builds yourself. Using that as a gateway to becoming a better player of Path of Exile, understanding your build, understanding the power that you can eke out of your build, and really acquiring a level of comfort and mastery over the game that you may not have gotten otherwise if you didn't become very good at using this tool. So I'm going to be doing something very different than what I usually do and cutting this down into a series of bite-sized videos, or maybe meal-sized videos instead of buffet-sized videos like I usually do. What this allows me to do is create a series focused on specific parts of the tool, as well as easily amend and add on to this series for any additional functionality that may be added to Path of Building. Over the course of the next week or so, I'm going to be posting about a video a day going over specific parts of Path of Building, the tree, the skills, the items, calcs page, and very much the configuration page. And I'm going to try to keep these videos a bit on the shorter side, very focused towards whatever that topic is. I'm setting the stage here a little bit long because today's video is going to be very short. We're going to be focused entirely just on setting up Path of Building, importing, exporting builds, and just understanding where your builds are and how Path of Building manages handling them. All right, and before we get started, huge thank you as always to all of you subscribers and patrons. The motivation and the ability to do this would not be possible without you guys. And if you're interested in content like this and you want to support it, you can go to patreon.com/subtractem. All right, let's get into it. All right, so a little bit of a history. Path of Building was originally written by someone called OpenARL. I don't know how it's pronounced, but he was someone that was actually the original developer of Path of Building, and then he was hired by GGG. I don't think he's there anymore, but he was hired by GGG and actually just left it as an open source project for other people to maintain. He stopped maintaining it after getting a job down there. So after that, it was taken over by Local Identity and Crew and is now called the Path of Building Community Fork. Anyone, if you are a programmer and you want to contribute to it or you want to learn programming by working on Path of Building, it is something that you can do. I have contributed to it myself. It's an awesome community source thing that you can work on if you're interested. And to do that, you can go to the GitHub, you can join the Discord, talk to Local Identity and Crew, and they'll get you set up there. However, for the lay folks in the audience, all you got to do is go to pathofbuilding.community, click this download link right here, double click on the Path of Building Community Setup executable, install the application, and you will get a start menu shortcut for running Path of Building. This is a Windows-only tool. It is entirely compiled on .NET, as far as I believe. I know folks have gotten it running on other operating systems, but it is currently assumed to be Windows-only. Okay, once you run Path of Building, this should be the first window that you see. So this is the list of builds that you have available and saved, as well as the ability to make new ones. In the lower left corner, you will see the check for update button. You'll see which version that you're running. You'll see a list of options, which we will also go over today, as well as the about page, which will give you the version history, which as Path of Exile players, we all know that you love the patch notes. Very important to make sure that your Path of Building is up to date. Like I said, this is a community source tool. Bugs are being updated fairly frequently, and especially around league start when there's things like new gems, new uniques, anything like that, it's very important to get the latest update to make sure that your Path of Building is working with the latest POBs that people are releasing. If you don't have any builds saved, the only options that you can really do here are make a new folder or click new. For reference, where your builds are saved is under this PC, Documents, Path of Building, and then Builds. So if you look in here, you'll have this builds tab. And then if you want to just manually manage them in here, you can move the builds around within these folders, make your folders themselves. If you don't want to use this interface, you can just do it right here in your documents folder. And also, if you want to back them all up, you're going to format your computer, anything like that. If you don't want to lose your builds, you can just back them up in here. As you can see, I have a lot of really old files here that are out of date. I should really organize this. However, more recently, I've been spending a lot more time kind of keeping them up to date for whichever league that I'm playing. And that's been very helpful for keeping track of them as I start making more and more builds and sharing a lot of things here. I very strongly recommend, if you're going to be doing this, you don't want to do what I used to do, just keep them in one folder. You can also click sort by class. You can click sort by name, sort by last edited. If you just want to see your most recent ones that you've updated, we can see our very old builds back here. If you double click on it, it'll even go back to older versions of builds. You'll see the old brown tree. Everything is saved in Path of Building, even historical data. Man, that's a blast from the past, seeing this stuff. However, when you're just getting started, the only option that you're really going to have here is click New, and this will create a new build. This will be a totally naked build. it will be defaulted to a level 1 Scion, does not have any ascendancy or anything picked right here. And this is your first build. Now you can see in the upper left corner, you can click back. It will not save it. If you did make any changes, it'll prompt you as to whether you want to save it. But if you didn't make any changes, there will be no save dialog. If I do click something here and then I click back, I'll get this pop up right here saying that there's unsaved changes. Then I can click save and I can put this in a new folder. I can enter a new build name. Let's say class lesson build 1 right here. And then we'll see if I have it sorted by last edited. It'll be at the top right here, class lesson build 1. You can also click save as if you want to, save as an additional file. If you don't want to save over an older version, you can see current build is listed right here. It'll tell you what your current build is. That's your default setting up a new build, and then you can interact with the tool itself and put it together that way. However, very importantly, and this is a thing that I actually had to talk about a lot on stream over the past couple weeks. So this is actually going to be one of the most common ways that you interact with Path of Building. And that's by directly importing a profile from the Path of Exile servers. So any character that you have in the game, you can import directly into POB, and that way you don't have to directly configure all the gems, uniques, items, everything. So first off, you want to select whether it's PC, Xbox, or even Tencent or Garena if you're in Asia. Type in your account name. This dropdown on the right will show a list of accounts that you've typed in the past if you've imported those. I have to do this periodically when someone who only is on console doesn't have a PC and they can't set up a POB. I can still directly import their profile and look at what they have. Anyone that has a public profile, you can import it yourself and look at it. You can make your own POB from someone else's profile. And that gets missed a lot. A little bit of a side tip here. Going to PoE Ninja, when you're browsing builds, looking for things, you can either type in their PoE account name and then type in their character name. So actually, let's do that. Chronos69 right here. So I can type in Chronos69. Very big fan of that number he is. And you can then click a dropdown of which league that they're in, Affliction, Standard. You can look at all of their characters. It's totally public, right? So we can go here, and then we can look at their level 100 Inquisitor, and then import their passive tree, jewels, items, and skills. This then will have to be configured later to, deal with charges, deal with different buffs, stuff like that. That will be in a later video. But this is your default way to import a profile, whether it's yours or someone else's. And this is actually what you want to do if you're perusing PoE Ninja, looking at other people's builds. You want to import them, try to understand how they work, maybe make your own version of it. If you want a shortcut here, you can just directly copy this code and put it down here. This will either take a direct URL from like Pobin or Pastebin, or it'll just directly take the code. It'll tell you whether the code is valid. Click import right here. Now, if you do import from PoE Ninja, it'll actually configure it for you as well with PoE Ninja defaults. Do be careful about directly importing from PoE Ninja. You can see it has certain things that are checked by default that don't even apply to the build. So it can be a little funky sometimes. We'll spend a lot of time in the future talking about the configuration panel, but just be aware that the way that it's configured may not directly affect, reality. In addition, when you are importing here, you'll notice that there's these delete checkboxes. So by default, these are on, which means it'll totally override. When you import the passive tree and jewels, it'll override the old ones, delete them, and then you'll get a fresh brand new build based on what it's importing. However, if we have these unchecked, it will actually add additional ones. You'll notice that there's a lot of unused items right here because it's every time you're importing, if you're not deleting the old ones, it'll just add more and more. So if you want a clean build, make sure that you have these checked. These are on by default. If you have a nice template that you like, you have certain items that you like, and you want to bring another build into it and kind of compare some things, you can actually uncheck these and say, pull this from this build, pull this from that build, and then you can have a set of items or skills that you can kind of mix and match and compare. Okay, so that is the importing. Now, just as important is the exporting. If you click generate right here, it will actually generate a code that allows you to re-import that build and share it without even anything else on the internet. It doesn't have to go to POB, Pobin, or Pastebin, or anything like that. You can just directly share this code with your friends. It's a very, very, very long code because it's a compressed version of everything that goes into POB, including all of the notes, everything that you've typed in there, all of the custom modifiers, and all of that. It's not the most comfortable thing to share with people. And that is why we have things like Pobin or Pastebin. Actually, Pastebin is gone. Wow, Pastebin support is totally gone. So that's what we used to use back in the day. Sometimes it doesn't like sharing certain things. It has a lot of like 404 or 403 errors that happen. It looks like we've moved on entirely at time of recording to either just Pobin or PoE Ninja. I strongly recommend Pobin. I'm a very big fan of it. So if we click share right here, it will upload that profile to pub.in. And you can see with this link right here, we can click copy. And if there's a build creator, anyone you want to share your build with someone, it'll generate that Pobbin link. And this is actually, in my opinion, one of the cleanest, nicest ways to interact with Path of Building. Not just Path of Building, but actually if I want to get a quick glance at a build, I actually really, really like Pobbin. So you can see what gems are linked. You can see the settings for EHP, spell suppression, evasion, stuff like that. You'll see the basic defensive layers. If someone wants to look at a build really quickly, you can say, oh, well, negative 37% chaos res. That's why you're dying. You don't even have to open a build in POB to understand at least a quick glance of what might be weak about a build. And then with this, if you want to share it with people, you still do have the code right here, but I do recommend just using this Pobbin link if you want to share that, with a content creator or someone you want to share with your friends. This is really, in my opinion, the best way to share builds in Path of Building at time of recording. And then a very important button if you're doing party play or you want to set up anything with additional auras, or I've had to do this a lot recently as POB's kind of lagged behind certain features. So there's this party tab right here that can import party members that are exported as support. So the way to do that is, for example, take a build like let's take my Bane build from 3.20. Why not? So I can export it as a support build. This will give me a link right here. Then I can go back to another build. Let's say, hey, let's add Bane plus this Juggernaut build. I can go to the party tab and then import it right here. And you'll see that what it'll do is give me those buffs from that Bane character. It has to be exported as support, but then you can import it into another POB as an additional party member. Also, what you can do is open multiple Path of Buildings. This can be very, very useful for managing multiple builds at once. So I can go over here and pick something like my Soul Rend Trickster from 3.19. And kind of an interesting thing, we could do like a multi-generational, hey, what if I took this thing from 315 and combine it with a thing from 320? Could be some like theory, fun stuff with that. We can export this Trickster right here as a support build. And then we go back to our 3.19 Juggernaut build. And actually what you have to do is click append right here if you want to have multiple party members that have different buffs. Put in this link right here, import, and then you can see that we actually have the buffs from the first character, and then we append the buffs from the second character. And then we can kind of set up this party play. Then you can kind of import them into the primary POB that has all the party members put into it as support characters. All right, and then last up, I just want to show you guys the options panel. I think a lot of people don't know that this exists as well. There's an options panel right here that you generally never have to look at it, but just so you know what's here. You can set up different connection protocols. If you have a custom router with a firewall or anything like that, you might have to set up a proxy or, set up IPv4 or 6 based on whatever you have to get to routing to get out of there, particularly for connecting to Pobbin or pathofexile.com. That's local to your network. You can change your build save path. For me, it goes to documents, Path of Building builds. For you can make that something else if you want. The default node power colors usually is red and blue, but if you want some different colors, you can pick those there. Different hex colors for positive, negative values, as well as highlights. You can Google hex colors if you want to type in whatever you want there. You can opt in to weekly beta test builds. This will allow you to always have the latest version. I've done this in the past, generally pretty fine. I don't think it's really necessary. They update pretty often. As long as you click that check for updates in the corner, keep it updated, you should be good to go. Show 1,000 separators. I think that's pretty valuable. We get to billions of damage in this game. And if you just see one really long number without any commas or periods for you EU folk, definitely strongly recommend having the 1,000 separator turned on. And then you can even set it between comma and period based on where you are. Show build name in the window title. I think that's incredibly valuable. It's kind of a weird thing to even be able to turn off. Default gem quality. So I actually really like this set to 0. This is for later, but when you add a gem to the skills tab right here, it'll give it 20% quality. And I think it's really, really nice to make that default to 0, particularly if you're doing league starter builds, because you're going to want to go to like 20 0 gems for your league starter setup, especially after they nerfed the gem cutter recipe. Default character level 1, default item affix quality, put that at 50%. It's just really nice to like keep that default in the middle. You're going to have your average roll. Show build warnings. This is really, really useful. I'll show that in a second. Show tooltips, just keep that on. Invert slider. If you want to scroll up or right or down, I guess, if you want like invert Y for your scroll bars, that's a little weird, but yep, these are the option settings. Nothing crazy, but yeah, strongly recommend turning on the 1,000 separator, and I really like gem quality at 0. Last up here, there's the build warnings. You'll see right here, it says, I do not meet the intelligence requirement. You can have a build that just does not work. And sometimes this is not totally accurate. it doesn't understand certain setups that might be conditional. So it can miss some things sometimes. But generally, this is a really good thing to just do a spot check. If you're going to share a build with someone, make sure you have enough mana, make sure you have enough stats, anything like that. It's also really good when you update a build from an old version to a new version. There might be warnings if so many values change with like items or anything like that. Okay, so that is it for importing and exporting, as well as a couple other high-level things in the tool. I'm going to be filling out the chunkier stuff the rest of the week. I think there's going to be probably a couple of hours of content here. I'm going to go into a lot of detail for all of the little tips and tricks for you to upgrade your build and master Path of Building, and just understanding how this is simulating what is going on in the game and really understand what Path of Building can actually do for you. That's it for me today. There'll be more coming tomorrow. Especially huge thank you to all of you subscribers and patrons. You guys really make the difference in making all this happen. And yeah, have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.